G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to Star Citizen with Mags, and today we're not going to be doing some Star Citizen gameplay. We're going to be having a discussion about the latest concept ship announced by SIG for Star Citizen, the Banu Defender. So, the Banu Defender is the second ship for the Banu race that has been announced at this point, with the first ship being the extremely well-known Banu Merchantman, and its primary purpose seems to be that of an escort ship. A ship that travels with the merchantmen to keep them safe as they're travelling from location to location, as the Banu, after all, are a race of traders. Now, while the concept behind the ship is extremely sound, it has been courting a little bit of controversy since it was announced and demonstrated, as it was noticed rather quickly that there is a small issue with the ship's design. The Banu Defender has two configurations based on the forward arms for the ship. The first one is the landed configuration, which we see in this image here. The forward arms step out and lean forward and become the forward landing gear for the spacecraft. Now, the second configuration is the flight configuration. The arms raise themselves up and straighten themselves directly forward to the spacecraft itself, making an extremely aerodynamic design, likely very good for atmospheric flight, and a very smooth aesthetic to the shape of the ship. But it does cause one small problem for a ship that is designed for combat. The position of the arms in this configuration severely limits the visibility of both the pilot and the gunner in their cockpit positions. This, of course, is a massive issue, as in combat, visibility is key. He who can see better will always kill better and kill faster. And having the massive forward arms of the Defender blocking your vision is going to, well, prohibit your effectiveness at that. Now, of course, this is just a concept design done by artists to look impressive and to sell an idea behind a ship. Once the ship had made 3D modelling, it's likely the 3D artist would have noticed this and would have moved the arms for practical purposes in order to allow for vision into the cockpit. However, I think this would actually be a bad idea. When I first saw the design for the Defender and realised visibility was going to be an issue with the ship, I noticed immediately that the arms would look rather nice if they pulled out from the sides and folded around. Before I was able to come up with my own design of this, however, a Reddit user who has asked to remain anonymous had already realised and spotted exactly the same thing I did and came up with this image. The image displays the Banu Defender in the normal standard flight configuration that we've seen in the design so far that has the visual issue. However, when the ship goes into combat mode, the arm configuration would change to this. Now, this particular image has been discussed on Reddit quite heavily over the last 24 hours, but I wanted to put my own take on it here, because one of the things I like to do is not just look at a ship from a technical aspect, but look at it from a lore side. This particular design and the idea of having a normal navigational mode and then a combat mode built into the Banu ships is something that is actually already present in their ship designs and something that makes perfect sense when it comes to the lore of the race. So before I go too deeply into that, what I'm going to do is show you a couple of short clips from the recent ATV, or Around the Verse, that actually spoke about the Banu and about the Defender. I'll put a link to the entire video to the video description below, but these are the main pieces I would like you to focus on.
Going off of the allegory of the decline of the Roman Empire, if the Xi'an were sort of the influence of China and the Vandals were the Visigoths and the Tavaran was sort of feudal Japan, then the Banu would be sort of the Persian Empire. That was sort of their initial role. Because material things are very important to a Banu to signify their position and station in life, like their ships tend to reflect this kind of artisanal quality to it, of having really nicely etched flooring and stuff like that, because it's more impressive. And their ship that they're most known for currently is the Merchantman, which is a massive, reiterate that.
Yeah, because that's not really like just a ship to them used for transport. That's their home, and that's why it's on such a big scale that has all their belongings aboard that they travel around with, and that kind of idea of that traveling bazaar that they would come visiting with people is, kind of taking some inspiration from early Bedouin and nomadic traders, that they're moving with everything they own, and it's important to them in that way.
So because the Banu are so heavily in trade, one thing that's also interesting about them is that they don't necessarily look friendly, right? They could be a little aggressive, they could be a little awkward. So what they try to do, and this is part of why they put all their stuff out on display, is to show you that they're friendly, right? because in the ships they're going to have rooms, you know, their greeting room, and when you come into the greeting room, this is all their stuff that you can see, and maybe behind these closed doors it looks totally different, but they put everything out on display for you. Their costuming and their clothes should also be impacted in the same way. So maybe they're carrying lots of little trinkets, or maybe the types of clothes they have are from all different places in the universe where, you know, it's going to show that they've been to all these kinds of places, or something that's very rare and very valuable from somewhere far, far away. They're trying very hard to come off as appealing, even though they naturally aren't. You know, they should be a little creepy, they should be a little awkward, they should be, it's kind of the judging a book by its cover thing, where they probably wouldn't be the person you're going to come up to and say, like, this guy's going to be super friendly, I really want to trade with this guy. But as soon as you get to know them, you can see that they're, you know, very friendly, and that they're willing to do business with you, and that they want to make you as pleasant and as comfortable in their space and around them.
So looking at those 3 clips, we can take some information from them and then make a few logical assumptions. But first, what can we take directly from the clips? First, the Banu are a nomadic trade race that has been based on the idea of the trade caravans of the Persian Empire. They see their larger ships, such as the Banu merchantman, as not just being a ship, but being a home. Banu's ships are all designed to be beautiful as well as effective as a demonstration of wealth, and that the Banu are very aware of appearance. They carefully design and place everything around them in a manner that is meant to make themselves appear friendly and approachable in order to make trade more likely. And this goes from their personal appearance, the display and how they keep their own personal items, and into the internal design of their ships themselves. So now it's onto the logical assumptions. If the Banu are based on the trade caravans of the Persian Empire and they see their ships as homes, it's a pretty simple logic jump to assume that the crew members of these ships are likely not captain and crew, but parents, children, or extended family, a family operating the ship together. Now, the second thing is that the Banu seem to travel large distances. In fact, the further away they seem to be able to travel from Banu's space, the more prestige it seems to carry. This means that any Banu defenders that are flying with them would also have to make that journey at that extreme distance. Mercenaries tend to not want to travel too far away from the place where they get most of their jobs and make most of their earning, and a long distance trip like that would probably not be appealing. So it's logical to assume that any merchantman that has gained enough wealth to be able to afford Banu Defender escorts to travel with them over long distance has probably straight up purchased these escorts and owns them, and that these escorts are flown by family members. Much like how the trade convoys of ancient Persia were more often than not guarded by family members of the person running the caravan themselves. So what does this have to do with the design of the Defender? Well, actually quite a bit. If this is inbuilt into the Banu culture and this ship was designed for this kind of a purpose, then there would be an obvious concern about the well-being of the pilots. Even though this is a combat ship, the people piloting and running it are not just some nameless military pilot or some mercenary you've hired on. They are likely members of your own family, people that you grew up with, possibly your own children. There will be a level of concern about their well-being, and that concern would be reflected in the design of the ship. In the current standard flight configuration with the arms completely forward, as you can see here, the view to the pilot and the gunner are blocked, which does make this an unsuitable configuration for combat. However, it also puts almost 2/3 of the ship's length in front of the cockpits and in a position where a massive forward impact would likely fold the arms around the front of the cockpits rather than allowing the cockpit itself to take the force of the impact. Likewise, in this position, the arms are sitting high enough that they almost act like a side intrusion measure around the cockpit. The arms would act like a massive forward crumple zone. And their effect on vision wouldn't overly matter, as most navigation is done by computer anyway, and this is not an exploration ship. It's not planning on scanning the ground. It doesn't need the visibility while it's in normal transit mode. Plus, of course, as was mentioned in the videos, the Banu do like their ships to be artistically designed, and in this configuration the lines are extremely smooth. It is smooth for atmospheric flight as well, so it is practical, and in a way quite beautiful. And more importantly than any of that, although it does fit in with the idea of the Banu culture, is that with the cockpits largely blocked and obstructed by the arms themselves, the ship is actually rather non-threatening, and this comes back to the second part that was in that video. The Banu design everything around themselves. They sculpt themselves in a way that is designed to appear very friendly, to make people feel welcome, to be non-threatening, as they seem very aware as a race that they are rather intimidating. An armed combat ship is intimidating. It doesn't matter whether it's getting ready to go into combat or just sitting there observing what is going on, because to the person approaching it, the person who is not being escorted by it, well, they have no way of telling exactly what's going on in that cockpit. They cannot tell whether or not this ship is getting ready to attack them, or this ship is just going to sit there quite relaxed, just doing its escort duty. Note the difference between a Super Hornet just flying and a Super Hornet engaged in combat. The only difference between this ship in those two different situations is in one, it's firing its guns. And as the Banu are so concerned about their own appearance to other races, they would be aware of this. In fact, you can already see it in one of their designs, or the only other design of a Banu ship we have, the Merchantman. This is a cross-section design of the Merchantman. It is probably not how the Merchantman is going to go into the game, it was just something that was drummed up in concept. However, there are a couple of parts to this design that are very likely to go through, and they are very prominent within the design. First, let's take a look at the forward section of the spacecraft. The front section of the Banu Merchantman is actually armed with two massive forward-firing cannons. However, they are concealed within the hull. Now, the piece of information here says that they are concealed for the need of being low-key. However, that really doesn't work unless the fit was non-standard to begin with. This is because, obviously, the second a merchantman had been seen in combat, you would note where the weapons are folded from, and from that point on, everybody would know that this is where they hide their weapons. So you would know the weapons were there even though you couldn't see them. However, when you look at it back to that lore video, if you are a trader and you're going out of your way to appear non-threatening to a potential client, having your weapons exposed on the ship is probably not a great way to do that. However, having them tucked away neatly inside of the hull, hidden, concealed, even though everyone knows they're there, making it quite obvious that you're not preparing to use them, that they are not being targeted, would be a very smart idea. And you see the same thing as the forward guns reflected in the dorsal cannon as well. Again, the gun is tucked away, completely concealed. Highly unlikely that people wouldn't know it was actually there. The Banu Merchantman has been around for an extremely long period of time, and if this is a standard fit weapon, well, they would know it's there, but very useful if you're trying to demonstrate that you are not here for a fight, you're here for peaceful activities such as trade. The Banu Defender, however, does not currently reflect this mindset. It has two configurations in much the same way as any other UEE ship has two configurations. A landing configuration where it is set up into a position to land with the undercarriage extended. Admittedly, this does involve the arms moving out and forward, demonstrating that they're articulated, but it's still a landing configuration. And the second configuration is its standard flight configuration with the arms full forward, which is both the same in travel as it is in combat. Having the straightforward arm position as a standard travel navigation mode, and having the arms pull back as a combat mode, much like a caravan guard unsheathing his sword, is a demonstration that at this point we are going from peaceful negotiations and into combat. It also simultaneously fixes the visual problem with the spacecraft, and gives it another striking Banu-flavoured change to its overall appearance. Of course, for this to completely work, there would have to be one or two other changes rather than just the arms slotting back into position. For example, as it currently stands, the Banu Defender is armed with 2 size 3 missile hardpoints that are fixed and 4 gimbaled weapons points, again size 3. All the weapons are clearly visible in the design, and the missile mounts are hard fixed in the underside of the spacecraft, again completely visible. For the spacecraft's change between a navigation mode to an actual combat mode to make sense in terms of the way their culture works, these missile mounts would have to be mounted in internal weapons bays, and they would not reveal themselves until the ship switched to combat mode. Likewise, the main guns, the gimbaled weapons mounts, would have to retract internally into the ship, or maybe have a small sheath drop over the top of them, preventing them from being seen in standard navigation modes that would not reveal itself until the ship again switched into combat mode. So just to finish up here, this is just some ideas that I've had to modify the design of the Banu Defender in a way that would both fix the problems that the ship currently has in its concept stage, while simultaneously making the ship fit even more tightly with the Banu culture and the information that we have on the Banu race that has been released at this time by the lawmakers. Overall, I think the logic is pretty sound from my end, but please let me know in the comments section down below what you think of this. Do you think this fits? Do you think it doesn't? What changes would you do to the spacecraft if you had the option to? I do want to make it perfectly clear that I do like the design of the ship itself, and I will probably be purchasing one. Anyways, ladies and gents, hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to click that like button, subscribe if you want to see more, and until next time, fly smart, fly safe, and I will catch you around the verse.